First one, really.
Hello, this is Melissa Ryan with Lindsey Chadwick.
Hi.
And we are joining you here from the Betty Ford Children's Program. And just to give you a little bit about what we're going to talk about today is we know that when you include both alcohol and drugs, 1 in 3 kiddos in the U.S. currently has a loved one that's is using drugs or alcohol in their family. Is that correct, Lindsey?
Yep.
And so this talk is really going to be about understanding what those kiddos and those families face, how we can support them, what kind of resources are out there, how to even talk to kids about addiction. I mean, that's where this program really shines, is the way in which they communicate to kiddos about addiction and communicate with families in a way that's very empowering and loving, and really is designed to help bring the family together in the healing process. You're shaking your head. You agree with this, Lindsey. So I'm going to go ahead and have you just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about the program, and then we'll dive into, for our audience, how we would define addiction for kiddos, how to talk to kiddos about this, and why it's so helpful to get kids involved in the process.
Absolutely. So I'm Lindsey Chadwick. I've worked for Hazelden Betty Ford for 10 years now, which is a really long time, but I love this work because I love working with kids. I love working with families that have been impacted by addiction. Kids are often the first ones hurt and the last ones helped. They're so perceptive and intelligent, but a lot of times kids don't have the language to use to express themselves, and no one is talking about it in the family, so they just oftentimes will get calls from parents who are like, oh, my kid doesn't know anything, I'm not sure they need this group, and we're like, well, have you asked them? Do they know what words to use? And usually families are like, no. So we're like, okay, come on down. So one of the first things we do with kids when they come in, well, first of all, we just play with them and get to know them, because
have a good time.
Yeah. If a kid walks in this room and I was like, tell me all your family secrets, they're going to say, no, get out of my face, lady.
And they're probably not going to open up at all, and they will probably want to leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
So, the best thing you can do with kids is just play with them, get to know them, get on their level, meet them, let them know that you're someone that they can trust. So after we do that, though, we start teaching kids language, and we also teach the grown-ups who come through our group this language, that addiction is a disease that lives in someone's body. We don't know who gets it and who doesn't, but we can tell someone has it because of the way they act. So they need more and more alcohol or drugs, and they can't stop. And a lot of kids can identify some behaviors, because a lot of kids don't always see their parent drink or use, whether they've been in recovery a long time, or maybe a lot of grown-ups use outside of the home or when kids aren't there, so they think their kids didn't see anything. But a lot of kids are like, well, my mom sleeps all the time. Dad and mom fight a lot. Dad is never home. Dad is cranky. He yells at us some days, and the next day he doesn't. We never know what the rules are. So giving kids kind of that language of what it means can really help them learn to start talking about things and start connecting some of that behavior. So we also want to empower adults with that language so that they can keep talking. This is the thing that kids need to know. Our experience is that once kids know that addiction is kind of what's going on, they're like, oh, okay. They think it's their fault, We had one little boy who came through, and he said, my dad went to treatment, and we were like, oh, what's he doing there? He's like, he's learning to be more responsible, so he comes to my baseball games.
Interesting.
So, that was his experience of dad. His dad doesn't show up to baseball games. Dad doesn't show up to stuff. A lot of broken promises of, I'm going to be there, and then they're not. So when kids can kind of have that language, they learn it's not that dad doesn't love him, doesn't want to be at his games. Dad is sick. Dad has a disease. And
that gets in the way of following through on that promise.
Yeah, absolutely. We often say that addiction really keeps people from showing the ones that they love how they love them. They just can't always do it because they're so trapped. And that's something we talk about with kids, is really separating that disease from the person. And it gives kids a chance to say, my person I love has a disease, a sickness, and I'm mad about things that happen sometimes, but I love the person that I love, So once they see, like, dad's not a bad person, dad does love them, but dad is trapped, or mom or older sibling, whoever it is.
Or whoever their grown-up is, that or like you said, sibling, whoever their loved one is, they can kind of tease that out. And what happens to kids once they start to make that distinction between, oh, like this is the disease speaking and this is not my loved one speaking? What happens to them when they recognize that?
I think a lot happens for kids. You can almost see a lightness come into them. That's my favorite thing about the group. It's a Thursday through Sunday, and Thursday they come in scared, anxious, angry sometimes, like
very serious.
Yeah,
kiddos.
like what am I doing? What's happening? And on Sunday they leave laughing, playing, loving, peaceful,
joking.
Every time. And it's so awesome because I think that's a big part of it is the weight of the world gets lifted off of them. Like, now I know what's going on. Now I know it's not my fault. Now I know I can't control it. I can't cure it. I can't cause it. Those things. Now I know that my whole family is together. We're all on the same page. They're fighting addiction and not fighting that person anymore.
Yes,
and
which is powerful.
And it happens even for whether that kid's person is in recovery or not. A lot of kids have active addiction going on in their lives and can say, I love my person and they're not here and I'm sad about that, but I don't have to worry about them. I don't have to change what I'm doing in order to make them better. And those boundaries, it's the beginning of really learning boundaries, which is like a very adult topic, but kids need to learn it too. We have kids all the time that I quote unquote fire them from being their parents' sobriety coach.
Yeah.
They're like, every time a parent picks up a drink, what's in there? Every time they go to the bathroom, where's my mom going? Is she coming back? Like, what's happening? And it's like, you got to learn to let that go. And it's so peaceful for them to finally be like, my job is to be a kid. I'm going to be a kid. I'm going to focus on school. Unfortunately, homework's part of that,
Yeah, that's going to come every time.
Can't get away from that.
Can't get away, even if you're 5 now. Homework is a thing.
For real.
Yeah.
So I think they really get to just learn to focus more on themselves and that they can control their own happiness and not grow up trying to please that person or make them better or make things easier in their family, which is a role kids fall into so easily.
Yes, because kids are naturally so empathetic and open. And so that's another piece that I'd love you to touch on is, I've experienced this when working with couples impacted by addiction and families impacted by addiction, and there's this huge concern. And Kim Thompson, who I interviewed last week, who talked about the teen program, also said that there's just this fear and tenderness, and there's all this worry about what happens, now that my kid finds out I'm an addict or that I have this problem. I think it's going to cause all these issues, and really that's a lot of fear. So how do you talk to parents? How do you talk to grown-ups in these kids' lives about that fear? That's
probably one of the most difficult things that we run into. Like you said, 1 in 3 kids are affected by this disease, but they are not coming to a group like this.
No. Very small percentage, I imagine.
Because of fear, because of, I don't want my kid to know, I don't want other people to know. That stigma is really there with addiction. A lot of people feel that, I think parents are afraid, A, they're going to get in trouble, B, they're going to get judged, like, oh, I drank around my kid, or I used around my kid, like, you're going to think I'm a terrible parent, which we don't think that at all, and we try to make that very clear, both in every interaction that we have with parents. So kind of like to your point, when they call, I know how hard that first call probably really is.
So much courage.
And so we really try to say, like, wow, good for you, like, you've got 10 days, that's amazing, your kid just sounds amazing, you're such a lucky mom, really using that strength-based language is so important. And really empowering parents with, like, you're doing such a wonderful thing, you're so brave, you're so courageous. We say that many, many times, and we really believe that. And kind of empowering parents with knowledge, and caregivers, I shouldn't just say parents, caregivers with knowledge of that when your kid finds out, most of the time they're just relieved. We just had a little girl who came through, and mom hadn't really told her a lot about what was going on because her addiction wasn't very long. It wasn't as messy as others could be, you know, and so she kind of thought her kids didn't know a lot, and she didn't know how to tell them.
Gotcha.
And with some really simple language, we informed her, just tell your kiddos, like, mom has a disease, it's a sickness that when she drinks alcohol, hard things happen, and I'm learning not to drink alcohol anymore. So, what questions do you have about that, or what feelings do you have? And the kids were just like, oh, that's why you went away, and that's why we live with dad. And okay, it all makes sense, and you're getting better, and that's why you go to those meetings. And it was such an amazing thing that the little girl said, I just feel so happy because I know it's not my fault.
Wow.
I feel happy because now I know what's going on. They don't know. And not knowing is so scary for adults and for kids.
Yes.
And kids have so little power and control anyway over their lives. Like, let them be able to cope with this. If kids don't know what's going on, they're also not getting help. They're not getting skills to cope with. They're not talking about it. They're reinforcing the secrets, even in recovery, that happened during addiction, of that don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, that Claudia Black teaches us. And so when kids find out, they feel better. And
it's a relief.
And most parents don't. They're so focused on their own shame, their own guilt, their own fear, that the more we can empower them that it's going to be okay. Your kids love you. They love you so much. Like, that's your addiction. We use that separate language.
Yes.
That was your addiction. This is you as a mom. There's a difference. Kids recognize it immediately.
Yeah.
When mom's good, doing well, when mom's doing bad, or when dad's using, when dad's not, And they recognize the whole family. A lot of kids recognize when dad's drinking, mom is different too. They know what's going on. So it's kind of like, the other suggestion I have is often talking to caregivers are like, well, how would you like them to find out? Because they're going to find out. Would you like them to know it's from you, where you can give them the correct information? Do you want them finding out from another family member on accident? Do you want them finding out years from now and feeling like they were lied to? Because that happens a lot. Why not give them the information where you can control it, you can do it in such a way that your kiddos can understand it, and in a way that you want them to have that information in language. It's also a big part of prevention. Addiction is a part of their family.
Yes.
And if kids don't know about it, they are more likely to try it. They're more likely to fall into addiction themselves because they don't have those coping skills. And the last thing, be proud of your recovery. That's the most important thing, I think. It's like, you are doing this amazing, amazing thing in recovery. Even if you're not the person that's had the problem, you're still doing something to try and change your family legacy. So by talking to your kids and involving them in your recovery, it is such a amazing gift to give your kids, and an amazing example to set of, maybe these hard things happen, but look, I'm trying to make things better for the future.
Yes.
Instead of just sweeping that under the rug, because then what message is that sending kids,
Yes, and I know you're a big fan of Brene Brown.
Yep.
Just like me. And I think actually you introduced me to Brene Brown.
Really?
Yes, you when I interned here, like 6 years ago, you were like, you've got to watch this TED Talk.
Yeah.
And I watched it at a stage 2 in Colorado, when we were down in Colorado Springs.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, but one of the things Brene Brown talks about is shame can't live in the light.
Yes.
Right? So we are bringing this to the light, right? And there's also that saying in AA, you're only as sick as your secrets. And really, we're just trying to empower. This program really just tries to empower the families to no longer live in that secrecy and shame, that we can come out in the light, and that is freeing. And like what you're talking about with these kids, they come in so serious and just carrying, they're like little atlases carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. And this program, and the same with the caregivers, right? When they come in for the parent day, it's the family days, which is the first 2 days, it's just the kiddos.
Yep.
And then the last 2 days, there's the caregiver component.
Yep.
And the caregivers also come in with the weight of the world on their shoulders. And what this program does, which is so powerful and amazing, and is why I want more people to know about this, because it transforms the family. It doesn't just transform the kiddos, but it transforms the family. And one of the most powerful things is the caregiver, or the person that might have had the disease of addiction, who can't see how wonderful and deserving of love that they are. Their kids see that, and they see that in the eyes of their kiddos. And that is one of the most powerful things to witness, is the kid is looking at the parent and is talking about, yes, this disease hurt me, and these are the ways it hurt me, and man, I love you. And kids don't have necessarily those fronts or those filters. I mean, they're coming wholehearted, bringing that forth and sharing all this love and acceptance with their grown-up. And that just gives me chills. It's just so powerful.
It's amazing to watch, because you're absolutely right that kids love their grown-up. I mean, I tell them that all the time. Like, all I hear while I might hear some things that kids are upset about that happened, all it comes down to is I love my grown-up. I'm worried about them. I just want them to be okay.
Yeah.
I don't care what happens. I just want them to be okay.
Yeah.
That kids are willing, that's a question we ask them sometimes, like, what are you willing to give up in order for your grown-up to be okay? And they say everything.
Wow.
Everything. Like, they just love them no matter what they've been through. And we've seen some rough situations, and kids just love them. And their ability to forgive is so much better than adults. That's something that we always tell the grown-ups, learn from your kiddos. They're not harboring these grudges and this past the way that adults do. The adults can't forgive themselves, but when their kids forgive them, it's a huge step in their own recovery of, okay, I'm not a bad person. I deserve to have recovery. I deserve to be in my kids' lives. I'm going to work on, we call it TNR, treatment and recovery, is our superhero that beats addiction. So they say, I'm really going to work on my TNR now because I realize how important I really am to my kiddos and how much they need me and love me, and I haven't hurt them the way I thought. I think that's the other reason grown-ups are afraid to bring their kids or to talk to them about this even, is they're afraid that maybe they've hurt their kiddos, and they don't want to because they're great parents and they love their kids.
And they have a tender place in their heart for their kiddos, right? And that's the biggest part, is there's that tenderness, which whenever there's that tenderness, there's that vulnerability, right? And so when we feel vulnerable and exposed, it's not weird for us to go to fear and shame. Because all right, so we're back.
Yay!
Yeah, little technology issue. Funny story. I learned that I could set limits on my social media as a way to help myself be more present, and then that's what just kicked in and kicked us off. So that's funny and will happen. So this is a good example of what happens actually just with working with kiddos and families, right? Things are unexpected. And so you guys model to the families that that's going to happen, right? Questions are going to come up that are unexpected for them.
Yep.
Situations that are going to come up that are unexpected. And that's why this program's so great, because it helps the kiddos have tools to fall back on. And it also helps the families have tools. Wouldn't you agree?
Yep. We really try to empower kiddos with self-care skills, communication skills, so learning to talk about their feelings. We really let kids be kids here, which is really fun, but that's kind of that chaotic piece sometimes.
Yeah.
Kids are running around like crazy, and we're trying to remain calm and go with the flow. And working with kids, we never try to make kids fit our program. We try to make our program fit kids as much as humanly possible. So we try to, if we have a group that they only have a 20-minute attention span, okay, we're going to do all our activities in 20 minutes, and then we'll play for 20 minutes. So try to teach them to have fun, be a kid, because that's really what they should be worrying about, not schedules and being on time and things all working out. So, and we teach grown-ups that too. Parenting is a huge part of our programs.
Yeah.
Teaching them how to listen, how to play, and how to talk to their kiddos. So those are three of the important things that we try to cover about. Here's some language you can use. Listening is really important. They need to listen and not respond right away. We try to give them some grounding tools and connect them with support. So that's a huge thing. And one of the reasons I like doing stuff like this is connecting with other people and agencies, because our program's only 4 days. So we have to connect all our kiddos, all our grown-ups with other supports, ongoing supports, or different things that we just don't offer. We are very addiction focused, so if there's a lot of grief, trauma going on, they need long-term care for that. We want to send them to therapists like you who do couples, or people who work with little ones, or grief, trauma counseling, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different things. Our families aren't just struggling with addiction. So
there's a lot going on within the family system.
Yeah. So we try to connect grown-ups with that kind of stuff and really kind of talk to them about ways that they can just be better parents and be strong in their recovery and get their kids help and let their kids just be kids.
Which can be so powerful too, because since addiction often is a family disease, a lot of these grown-ups were also serious little kiddos, just like their kiddos, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so there wasn't as much play that would have happened in their childhoods. So they get to have what we would call a healing experience through the play and interaction with their kiddos.
Oh, yeah.
Which is awesome.
That's something that's really important to empower parents with, too, and caregivers, of you got to do it different now. You were raised a certain way, so it makes sense that you don't have a lot of ideas about parenting that came from your parents. And so we really try to talk to people about, what did you like about your experience growing up and what did you not like about it, and how can you incorporate that into your parenting now. And it's okay to reach out for help and get classes and talk to people and get your own counseling and therapy, because empowering them with those skills is so helpful in just moving this family in a different direction, and they don't have to repeat those patterns.
No, and there's a quote that I'm probably going to butcher because I'm not detail oriented, but that comes from Terry Real, and he just says something to the effect of family dysfunction is like a roaring fire that rolls down the hill, and when somebody has the courage to face the flames, they not only spare the children that follow, but they bring peace to their ancestors.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's what we're really talking about here, is this changing, like we said in the title, changing the family legacy, really empowering families and kiddos, because if you look at a family system that has addiction in it, there's often trauma. There's been big events that have taken place, and people are just coping and surviving the best they can. And so, this pattern that developed came out of a response to things that have happened, and then they just get passed on from generation to generation. And so really taking the shame out of that and recognizing, hey, these are family patterns. Maybe they worked in the past, maybe they didn't. It doesn't really matter. What we really want to focus on, do they work now? And if they don't, what can be the next option for the family?
Absolutely. And helping them point out their strengths that they already have.
Oh, hey Danny.
Hi, Danny.
And it looks like my mom's online too. Hey, Mom.
Hi, Melissa's mom. It's such a thing that a lot of grown-ups come here and they feel so bad about maybe things that have happened. We're like, you did a great job. You did a lot of things really right. Like, your kids are awesome. All our kids are amazing. Yeah. And letting them know that and helping them find that, I think, is so powerful in eliminating some of that guilt and shame. And hearing from their kids hearing from their kids tell them, there's some hard stuff for me, but this was some good stuff, and how much they love them eliminates a lot of that shame and guilt too. And lets parents really move forward with forgiving themselves and moving forward with their own parenting and their own recovery, and not living in that past trauma is so helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So we had a question for you. This will be kind of our last wrap up, which is, we really just want you to think back. This is a reflection question of something that you learned as an adult that you would have loved to learn as a kid, and how that would have impacted your childhood, right? Because that's a lot of what we're talking about, is giving kiddos this information, and that just transforms their lives as adults. Yeah. And so we also would love you to share this information, even though I see that what my mom said, it's so relevant to her kiddos. So my mom works at Head Start.
Oh,
she's
great.
a Head Start teacher, and I'm sure, Mom, this is very much applies to the work you're doing, and other folks, even if you're not working with families impacted by addiction, although, like we said, it's 1 in 3 kiddos.
So make sure you're asking about it.
Yes, definitely asking about it. And also, just like you and I were talking about, this can show up around other things. It can show up around mental health issues, a lot of the chaos that can come from somebody who has untreated depression or untreated bipolar or anxiety, or that these kinds of similar family patterns can manifest out of trauma. And so it's the same deal in that talking about it and being open about it and putting it in kiddo language, so that kids don't take on that responsibility. So that you don't have a bunch of little atlases running around. They just have kids playing and laughing and joking and loving on their families.
Getting to be kids.
That's what we're all about. So we invite you to share this. There's 2 parts now, so maybe you should pick which part you want to share. But just getting this information out, it's so powerful. So glad Lindsey and her crew are doing the work that they're doing. It's so valuable. We want this shared with as many people out there, because we just know that, like we said, we know 33% of kiddos are being impacted in this way. So that means probably 33% of families are being impacted this way. And so this is an amazing resource. It's so empowering and loving, and it's just a great way for people to heal.
Ooh, sorry.
It's okay. So, any last thoughts, Lindsey? Well, this has been a lot of fun with the camera.
I just wanted to say also that no child's ever turned away due to the inability to pay, so it can be free. And we also want to be a resource to community members if you have questions or have adults who have questions about their kiddos or talking to them or recovery. We're really happy to just be a resource for that too. So don't hesitate to check us out if even if we're not the best fit for your families.
So we'll put information in the comments about the Betty Ford Children's Program. You guys have programs about 2 times a month?
Yep, about twice a month.
Twice a month, which for their main program, and they have several levels, a couple levels after that. You also have a weekly group that meets.
Yep.
Parent support, but then also and support for the kiddos.
Kids and teens. Yep.
Oh, kids and because Kim's starting her program too.
Oh yeah.
Yay! Okay, so lots of great resources. Reach out to either of us about questions, and we're glad you joined us. Thank you.